We are back with Lesson 3, Stage 2, Working with Type. Most logos have artwork with some text. It usually identifies the corporate brand name, and sometimes there's a tagline with it. At this stage of the project, we are going to use some of Illustrator's basic type formatting options to set up the client's company name. We'll substitute the O in limon with the lemon that we've created. We're all going to use some illustration techniques to manipulate the individual letter shapes after we have used some basic type formatting options to set up the name. We need to understand some basics about type, just so that you know some terms that are commonly used. First of all, we have two basic categories of type. We have a serif type, which has these little flourishes on the ends of the letters. We zoom in. These little things, okay, those are serifs. And our other option, we also have a sans serif, which is a font that doesn't have decorations. Sans is the French term for without. The shape of the letter is determined by the specific font that you use. So if I were to change this font, let's try something else. How about, here's another one, Mirage. The letters are shaped differently. It's still a serif font. It has a little tail on it, but the letter is built completely different. Some other peculiarities of a font might be the letter spacing. In this particular one, the letters are spaced according to the size of the letter. Other typefaces will use the same spacing for all the letters, like an old-fashioned typewriter. So the letter I will be occupying a space that is just as wide as an O. Type sits on a baseline so that all of the letters line up evenly. The height of the letter from the top to the bottom of a smaller, of a lowercase letter is called the X height. The reason that is called the X height is because it is indeed the height of a letter X. Take that back out of there. Anything that hangs below the baseline is called a descender. Anything that stands up above the height of the X line is called an ascender. Type is generally measured in point. We are probably familiar with the use of points if you ever had to write a term paper where it was specified that you were going to use Times New Roman 12 points. You're already familiar with the point size. There are 72 points in an inch, so you can do some math and figure out just exactly what portion of an inch that 12-point font comes out to. Measurement of points is the distance from the bottom of the descender to the top of the ascender. We also have something else called leading. Leading is the height of the typeface from the bottom of the descender to the top of the ascender, plus the area in between, like from here to here, that separates the line of text from each other, and that's called body clearance. Now that you're familiar with some of the terms, we're going to create some point type objects. Creating type in Illustrator is pretty simple. You just click with the type tool and start to type. Many advanced options are also available, like importing text from an external file, using area type to control a large block of text, and so on. We're going to do the basic type formatting controls in this lesson. So let me get this layer and delete it. I'll turn my lemon back on, and I'm just going to get rid of my type layer. I have already locked my lemon layer. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to add a new layer and call it type. There is a lovely section in your book about working with Adobe Typekit. For those of you who are renting your program and you are using this at home, you're going to have access to Typekit. Not everything in Typekit is going to be a free available font, but there are many that you can use. If you are working in the computer lab at the college, you are not going to have Adobe Typekit available to you. So my best suggestion on that is to use a typeface that is loaded on your computer that looks similar to the typeface that they are recommending in the book. We're going to select the type tool in the tools panel and click an empty space on the artboard. This is going to create what is called point type. It's also called path type. That means that the text sits on a single line or a path instead of being an area type object where we draw a rectangle and put the type inside of it. You're going to see your flashing insertion point, and the text is going to appear from there. We're going to type the word cafe. When you click the type tool, Illustrator automatically switches to a default black fill and no stroke. The new type is automatically set into the last used character and paragraph formatting options. And so everybody's type is going to be different that pops up here. I'm going to pick up the direct selection tool in the tools panel. This will select the point and path that make up the type object. I want to find a typeface now that is going to work for this particular piece of logo type. I do not have ATC Garnet Medium loaded on my computer. So I'm going to go looking for a different typeface and find something that looks similar to what they're asking for. I looked through all of my fonts. I found something that I liked that I thought worked pretty well with what we're looking for, and I selected a typeface that I had loaded called Cobble Demi. Look for whatever you have loaded on your machine. If you're not sure what else to use, you can use Arial, or you can use Helvetica or Swiss. Any of those will work just fine. We want you to find something that you have loaded. If you have access to Adobe Typekit, follow the instructions in the book. You'll need to sign into your Adobe account to access Typekit, and then you can download and use the typeface that they suggest in the book. Now that I have this selected, there's my typeface. I'm going to pick up my selection tool in the tool panels, and now I have a bounding box that's going to appear. Generally speaking, this is not something you really want to do. Generally, you do not want to stretch type. You want to use the size and change the size to something larger. For this instance, we are going to stretch this. Just know that you can do this. It's not highly recommended. You want to keep your proportions, hold down your shift key. We want to make the height of this approximately a half an inch. Doesn't have to be exact because we are going to go in and we're going to change the type to a 72 point size. In your character panel, you should make sure that your height and your width are proportional at both at 100%. Using the type tool, well, you know what? Something that they're not telling you is that you can triple click on the letters and it will change your cursor. You will pick up the type tool automatically and select the text cafe. With that selected, with your text selected, open up your standalone character panel. You're going to have to do that from the window panel. Go into type and select character, because otherwise this one is the one that's up here on the drop down is going to just keep closing every time you click off of it. That's just too much back and forth to reopen that all the time. We want you to take a look at a couple of terms here. First of all, in the drop down, you're going to have your general type. You're also going to have the leading. Next, you're going to have kerning, which is the spacing between two characters. The next one over is tracking. Tracking is the space for the entire line or whatever segment of the line you have selected. Most industrial quality font families come with built-in kerning and built-in tracking. Smaller type doesn't usually pose tracking and kerning problems, But when the type gets large, spacing can become an issue. To fix the spacing problems, you need to adjust the kerning and or the tracking values. There is a good section in the book that I'm not going to go over. It's Illustrator Foundations, the character panel in depth, and it covers all of the items that you will find in your character panel. I don't have mine fully expanded. There are all of the options available. You can read through that to become familiar with everything in that section. Now we're going to change the tracking field from what is currently 0 to a minus 18. You can type it in, you can use the down arrow, and that's going to snug your letters up quite a bit. We want to bring the C and the A a little closer together. You may not want to bring yours in quite as close, depending on the text that you have, but for my demo purpose, I'm going to bring this in a minus 10. We're just going to keep this going to a minus 20. This is all going to be really your call. If it looks too close to you, by all means, don't bring it in that tight. If it looks like it needs to be tighter, you can adjust this yourself. When you work with type in Illustrator, you need to be aware of a few special issues that can affect the way that you interact with the application. This exercise is going to look at some of the common problems that can arise when you work with type, as well as some of the tricks you can use to work around them. So now, with this open and you've got your type tool, click at the end of the existing type to place in the insertion point. Move your type tool cursor below the existing type and click. You can't click to select a new object. With the insertion point still flashing wherever it is, push down your control key or command if you're on the Mac. That switches to the selection tool. And now you can click outside of the bounding box. And now you can click below the text to put in your new insertion point. You're going to type in the word limon, Limon, and using your control key or command key, click on the text and drag it until the F in cafe lines up with the I in limon, and you can get it lined up really well. That looks pretty good. Release the mouse button before you release your control key, and then with your control key again, press shift, click, and drag this straight down until there's just a small space at the bottom of the E in cafe and the top of the M in limon. And you should be pretty good right about there. Save your file.